up, guys? This is Derek with the Houston Freethinkers, and I'm happy to bring to you today a special guest, news anchor out of Cincinnati, Ohio with WXIX Fox, two-time Lone Star Emmy Award-winning journalist Ben Swann. Now, some of you know Ben Swann for his work out there doing the reality check, bringing you real news in the midst of all the mainstream lies. He's actually been able to question President Obama on his drone kill list, his program there. Probably the only person that's had the opportunity to do so. And plenty of other great things. We're happy to bring you to the show. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, Derek. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a while since we've been communicating. I want to talk with quite a bit of activities today, mainly focusing on where you're going now. You've been making recent announcements on some new plans you have, but before we get there, let's start with how we first came in contact with each other. Back in August, during the election, the Republican National Convention, the third-party debates, you were supposed to be participating in a roundtable at the third-party debates for the Free and Equal Debate Foundation. We did an interview with one of the organizers through there, and he let us know that you were supposedly threatened or told not to participate, or that you were unable to participate, something along those lines. And so we put out an article which got me in touch with you. And it seemed that since that point there has been some effort to censor you, and many people have been afraid that your work would be shut down. So is this what we're seeing take place, Ben? Have you been censored now and they're shoving you out of the mainstream?
No, I don't think it's so much that. I know why people kind of feel that way or suspicious of that. It's really not so much that at all as it is, the station that I've been at, been incredibly blessed to have been there. Really love the people there and had a really good working relationship with them, and really grateful for the kind of the freedom that they gave me throughout that process. Creating Reality Check was about doing something that nobody else was doing. And a lot of stations, quite frankly, aren't courageous enough to step out and to do something like that. So one of the things that's really important to me is that, we continue to have an uncensored message. And that's really, really important. So one of the things that happened with the station is, as we've talked and we've discussed, kind of where things are at, they're moving in a direction that's a little more Cincinnati-centric, if you will, kind of focused on Cincinnati. And obviously, the content that I'm looking at is a little bit more national in scope, and that's great. Again, we have a good working relationship, but the opportunity came up for me to be able to move on, and I decided that's the right thing to do now, because it's less about what I can't do there and what I think I can do, rather, away from that station, which is to continue to build out this platform and to really break down that left-right paradigm that we're seeing all throughout news media.
Exactly. So you made an announcement just a couple of days ago asking your fans and supporters to fill out a survey on how they could help you, correct?
Yes, that's right. We put one up. It's over at benswann.com. And if you go there, you can take the survey. And really, we're trying to get good feedback on a couple different things. Some people who have looked at it say, well, I don't want to take the survey because I feel like you guys are data mining and you're trying to get information from us that you're going to sell off to someone else. I guess technically we're data mining in that we're trying to get information, but we're not doing it for the purpose of selling it off or giving it away to some government group or even some commercial group. What we're trying to do is gauge, number one, where the trends are in media, because what we believe is that there is a dinosaur media, if you will, throughout the country that really is kind of a dying model. You guys know that. There's alternative media, which is sprouting up everywhere, but it's the question for us is, how do you bridge between those two, between mainstream, kind of the old model, and alternative media, which, while it's growing like crazy, it's kind of all over the place still. So how do we bridge between those two things, and how do we find a platform that is most beneficial to people, not just people who are already seeking out alternative media? Because look, let's face it, there's a lot of people out there who are going to alternative media as their news source, but if you're only speaking to those people, then you're kind of preaching to the choir, and we don't want to do that. What we want to do is talk to people who are still getting the majority of their news and from that mainstream kind of dinosaur source, and they're not getting a bigger picture. We really want to be able to educate those people as to kind of opening their mind as to what's going on in the world around them and seeing things from a different perspective.
Yeah, I agree with you. We have people who strictly watch the mainstream media. Then there's another set, I think, that doesn't pay attention to the news at all. And then again, there's those of us who strictly listen to the alternative media. But we don't want to just put ourselves in a pigeonhole, so to speak, or just put ourselves away separate from the mainstream audience, because the only way that the alternative media has been able to grow is by us reaching the masses and continuing to push this message So I'm glad to see you work on that. So have you developed any ideas on this yet? Do you see this as maybe you anchoring a new platform or having multiple reporters, or what thoughts have you put forward on that?
Well, what we're looking at doing right now is definitely expanding it out to a larger platform than where we are now. What we're considering doing is starting off by trying to launch a series of at least 100 videos that would be the same reality check, full disclosure type format, but very high-end videos, the kind of stuff that's going to rival anything you see on a news network anywhere. And one of the reasons that's important to us is because we understand that there is a certain kind of view of alternative media as being less professional and therefore less credible, which you and I both know is not true. It's almost like an urban legend. But at the same time, we also have to deal with some of the facts, and the facts are that if we're trying to win over people who are on the outside of a liberty mindset, or on the outside of kind of a view of government, of politics, of the economy, different than what the mainstream media is telling them, then you've got to be able to play the game. You have to be able to look the part as being credible and be able to compete on the same level. So what we're trying to do is create really good, strong, high-end videos, 5 minutes or so in length, packaging them in a very different way than anything that's being packaged out there, and then putting them onto platforms like Netflix, Spotify, Hulu, onto streaming sites where we know that the majority of Americans are now starting to get their entertainment. So why not also make that a source for them to get their news there as well?
Yeah, you're right about that. If we're going to have a marketplace of ideas and of media, we are going to have to compete with the big guys. I agree. There are plenty of really well thought out, well researched videos that just don't have the quality to keep the average person entertained long enough. And we are kind of battling this television 30-second snippet, short attention span generation that needs to get videos and information that they can absorb within 3 to 5 minutes. So I'm glad to see you focusing on that, because you have the ability with your work and the support that you've got, and the more people who hopefully follow your lead in the mainstream and in the alternative media, we're going to see these projects crop up. There's the Next News Network, there's obviously InfoWars and Alex Jones that have been doing it for a while, and I'm really excited to see what you do with this project. Why is it that you feel, and in your experience and interaction with other reporters, other journalists, more in the mainstream side of things, why is it that you feel that you are a lone voice in the crowd of misinformation and disinformation?
Well, I think there's a couple things that are happening. One is, I feel like we're not so much the lone voice as we are just a unique voice. And part of the reason for that is because within mainstream media, quite honestly, we see the majority of people are really, they're news readers, or they're trained to be broadcasters more so than trained to be journalists. And so, and that's not a criticism of everyone out there, okay? I don't want people to think that I'm saying that I'm the only journalist out there. That's not true. But a lot of people who go into, especially local media, really are trained now. They're trained and taught in school to become a broadcaster, not a journalist. And so we see that that's happening. Meanwhile, you have these big corporations that own lots of station groups across the country, and they're just wanting to cut costs. And when you do that, you remove people who, need to be paid well. Well, a lot of times those are good journalists. They leave, and you hire people who are really young, and they come in, and so they really haven't been trained. It's kind of a cyclical thing where you're constantly seeing the turnover and the change, and you're seeing that a lot of really good journalists have left the business. That's not to say that young journalists aren't good. They're young and they're new. So there's kind of this process that's gone on, and a lot of it really just comes back to money and budgets, more so than it does an agenda to squash people's voices. But what we think is the other important thing here, and what we're trying to do is we're really trying to make a major impact. We're going to be launching an effort to do some crowdsourcing in order to make this happen. And we know that as we do that, that money talks to corporations, and it talks to media, and it talks to enterprises. And I think when you start to make a lot of noise saying, look, there's a lot of people out here, and they support this stuff, and they're behind it, that's when you start to move mountains. And it's too bad it's that way, but that's the reality of it.
Yeah, that's the reality, and I believe, as you said earlier, we're moving past not only the left-right paradigm, but I hope that we're seeing a situation where the alternative media is going to become the new norm, and hopefully not go towards where we'll become the new dinosaur media, because in order for us to remain relevant, we have to keep asking real questions, you know, whether it's the work you're doing on the more professional level to the citizen activist journalist running around with his first microphone and camera on the streets. You know, they're all important ventures, and we need to continue to push so that we can get relevant topics discussed and change the discourse in this country, which I think that you have done a great job towards making.
And one of the things that we want to do too, you know, through this project is it's not just about Ben Swann. It's about opening up, because as you mentioned, there are a lot of really good journalists out there and people who are doing good journalism. Whether they're professional journalists or not, they're doing good journalism and they're researching stories and they're finding great stuff. And we want to help build those people up as well. And maybe in some cases taking content that they have that's really good content and helping them to package it in a way that people are educated by it. And it's not one of those things where we want to take somebody else's stuff and pass it off as our own. It's not about that. It is about saying, look, we understand that it's an entertainment venue. Again, the expectation is high from people, and if it looks a certain way, they're not going to take you seriously, and it's sad. It's sad that you can have really high-end quality stuff that's really just garbage TV out there, and people will sit for hours and watch it. You got really good information out there, but because it doesn't look good, it isn't packaged the right way, people ignore it. So we're really trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah, and I think that's a necessary step. I want to move on to a couple other things while we have you here, Ben. There's obviously a lot going on in the world. We're talking to you the day after the Boston marathon bombings. There's the vote coming up for the Cyber Intelligence Sharing Protection Act. There's earthquakes in Iran and a lot of things. But what's on your radar this week? You know, what's really catching your eye, and what are you focusing on?
Well, we're actually focusing on a few things, including this deal in Boston. Obviously, it's a terrible, terrible thing that happened there. Clearly, it's an act of terrorism. The question is, who's behind it? What's the purpose for it? You know, as a journalist, you really have to avoid speculation, because that's not what we're here to do. What we are here to do, though, are look at facts and a couple of things that we're paying attention to. For instance, the Boston Globe had tweeted out yesterday at 2:53 p.m. that officials were saying they were going to have a controlled explosion across from the library in Boston. And as you may have heard, there was a third explosion that was near the JFK library, which accounts for that explosion. No one was hurt in that one. Again, it accounts for it. But what's a little bit troubling to me about that is that we've been seeing a number of press conferences from police in Boston, and no one's just saying, hey, that was ours, that was our controlled explosion. I don't know that it was, but it just seems like there's some things there that don't quite make sense. In addition to that, we're hearing about 5 other undetonated bombs that did not go off. So there's a lot of information there we want to get into, we want to look at. What bothers me is that you have commentators nationally on CNN and people like Chris Matthews over at MSNBC, Wolf Blitzer at CNN, who are saying, well, this may be a right-wing extremist group, it may be a patriot group, it may be a liberty or a constitution-focused group. Based on what? And so there's a lot of that rhetoric starting to pop up. And you know, Derrick, the biggest issue I have there is media is a powerful tool, and media spends a lot of its time trying to shape conversation rather than just reporting facts. Journalists should be reporting facts, not shaping the conversation. So we're going to take a look at that. The other thing we're taking a look at also this week is the situation with this abortion doctor in Philadelphia, and the fact that his trial, he's on trial right now, is getting virtually no coverage by mainstream media at all. And it's not about a pro-life, pro-choice issue. It's about there were horrific things taking place in this man's practice for many years. Girls who were in poverty going to him, and the conditions that they were in during these abortions, babies who were born and then killed after the fact, after they were breathing. He had 15-year-olds at times working for him as assistants. So the whole thing it's an incredible story, and media has completely ignored it, and we all know why they've ignored it, because it's a political issue. They'd rather not talk about it because it's an abortion issue in their minds, so they don't want to discuss it at all. And again, it's a disenfranchisement of the people who are supposed to be able to count on media as a fourth estate, and media instead trying to shape conversation.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with you on that. It is a powerful thing when you recognize, as me personally starting as an activist and then moving towards journalism and doing our own reports, it just happened because it was necessary. But you start to recognize the power of when you have an audience, when you have people listening, and how you can shape the conversation. You can either drive them to a place of fear and panic and anxiety, or you can report facts and try to get them to start thinking for themselves. And it's a powerful tool. So it's good to see you trying to shape that and point it in the direction of stories such as that. Have you been keeping an eye on the ongoing saga of the Department of Homeland Security ammunition purchases?
You know what, we have, and we want to do more with that. Certainly, we haven't done enough with it yet, but it is a huge issue because you have a lot of discussion about ammo that's being bought and purchased. You know, right when a lot of these gun laws have been discussed, you're seeing a lot of people go out trying to buy new weapons and also ammunition, and there are huge ammunition shortages right now. And as you mentioned, part of that's because the Department of Homeland Security, the Social Security Administration, the Post Office, you have all these different government agencies that have been buying in mass quantities huge amounts of ammo. And, you know, is it a conspiracy? No, but it is a fact that it's happening. So why they're buying the ammo maybe becomes a point of conjecture, but the fact that they're doing it is not conjecture at all. It's an absolute fact that they're doing it. It's definitely a huge story. Yeah,
and we've been actually able to get the Congress to respond now. There was, I can't remember the name of the congressman, but he sent a letter into requesting on information about this, and they finally, within the past week, have responded, notifying his office that they will be setting up a meeting, who knows when, but at some point for a congressional review to discuss these matters, and who knows if it's going to be a closed-door meeting or not. But again, it's the power of the media and to shift that conversation, because those ammunition purchases have been going on for at least a year now. And when they first started out, they were sort of in the realm of conspiracy, like you were saying. They were like, people were talking about these ammunition purchases. Now, a year later, we're at the point where mainstream media is talking about, where the Congress is actually having to address the issue.
Yeah, it's a pretty remarkable issue when you consider, again, as you mentioned, that it's been going on for a year now, but it's still not getting near the kind of mainstream coverage that it should be getting, because, again, it's a big story. And one of the problems with our media in this country today is they have abdicated the responsibility of holding either politicians or elected figures accountable for any actions. And that doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong with ammo purchases, but the fact is they should be held accountable for those purchases. What are they for? Who are they going to? What is the purpose for it? Why do you need that much ammo being stockpiled, again, by agencies even like the Postal Service and the Postmaster General purchasing this? Or are you simply using budgets within all these departments in order to stockpile weapons, ammo? And so there's definitely legitimate questions there, but questions that really are not being addressed.
And hopefully we'll get to the bottom of that soon. Before I let you go today, Ben, I want to give you a chance to offer any type of advice or solutions that you may have from your unique perspective for our listeners and for your supporters out there, because I see often, you know, we get stuck in reporting the news, the media, ammunition purchases, war, bombings, and these things, and a lot of people don't want to even turn to the news, as you know, because they're afraid of the fear, or because they don't feel empowered by the news, by the media. And that is my personal goal, and through the Houston Freethinkers, what we're trying to do is to empower people. So any words of encouragement or solutions you have to offer, we would appreciate.
Absolutely. Listen, one of the things that's really important, and with whatever happened yesterday in Boston, the expectation, as I mentioned, this idea that, oh, this must be like a patriot group or a Constitution or a liberty group. The fact is, guys, there is without question, those who desire for the response to frustration with government and the desire for the response for frustration with civil liberties being taken away to be violence. There's a desire by some people for that. They want to see that happen because it allows them to control the narrative and it allows them to control the situation better. The reality is, though, that violence is not the answer. And I'm not saying that this was particularly the situation, other than the fact that there's an expectation that it would be. But violence isn't the answer, and just getting mad isn't the answer. Turning off your TV isn't the answer. What we need to do is educate people as to what's happening in our country and to have intelligent conversations. Be smarter than the person that you're debating or arguing. Be informed about what's going on. Have a wide range and a broad view of the picture, and avoid that trap of the left-right paradigm that says, I'm defined by what I am not. What we need to be defined by in this country is what we are, what we stand for, what we believe in, not what we're against. And so I really want to encourage people as you're kind of going through your process. It's a frustrating time in America right now, I think, for a lot of people. And we want to see people encouraged to stand up and say, I'm going to know more today than I knew yesterday. And it may not always fit with what I was hoping I was going to find out. But I want to be informed. I want to be smart. I want to be educated. And beyond that, I want to be able to help other people in their process. So I really want to encourage you in that. I want to encourage certainly everybody out there who is a journalist in their own right, either professionally or doing it because it's a passion and something you want to do. And you're a journalist if you're just putting stuff on Facebook, if you're posting and writing to your friends, if you're tweeting, that's a form of journalism. And so I want to encourage you guys in that too, that you keep it above the fray and that you work really hard to, again, educate people and wake them up to what is happening in this country, but do it in a positive way, a way that says there is a better way than the way that we're doing it right now. And I want to thank you, Derrick, for the work that you guys are doing out there, the Houston Free Thinkers. I think you guys are doing a great job, and again, you're trying really hard to kind of break through that left-right paradigm and to educate the masses. And I appreciate the work you're doing.
Yeah, and we appreciate your work, Ben. Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go find out more about your show and help you figure out what you want to do next.
Absolutely. I'd love for you guys to go check it out over at www.benswann, that's BENSWANN.com. benswann.com. Go there, take the survey, and again, you can tell us what you think and tell us whether or not we're headed in the right direction. You're going to have to answer some questions there, and we'd love for you to answer them. But they're nothing, too difficult. It's stuff about who you are. But we just want to see who our audience is and how's the best way not only to reach them, but to reach like-minded people. I have a saying that I think the majority of people in this country really are liberty-minded. They just don't know it yet. But we want to help to make sure that they know it.
Thank you, Ben Swann. I'll talk to you soon.
You got it, man. Thanks.